Greetings, everyone, and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Chief Content Officer at Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. We are recording this on Friday, August 2nd. It was another busy week in the campaign for president as Kamala Harris inches closer to the official Democratic nomination. A virtual roll call is ongoing with nearly 4,700 Democratic delegates voting virtually to solidify Harris's nomination. And Republican former President Donald Trump attacks what he says are the current vice president's policy failures from years past. Joining me to discuss all things presidential election is Casey Harper, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Center Square. Casey, there's so many directions we could go here. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, we could start with the polling. I think that's where you have to start in a horse race. What does it look like? And, Dan, I'm following this daily here in D.C., and it seems like every day there's some new poll that comes out and someone declares that this is the state of the election. Trump holds a slight lead nationally, or Harris is leading. And my takeaway, about almost, but not quite, almost 2 weeks into this race is that this is a tie at the national level. Some polls seem to show Harris leading just a bit. Others show Trump leading a little bit more. And then a few seem to show a tie. And so that tells me that nationally we have a tie. Now, in the battleground states, there can be a different picture. We don't have as many reliable polls in those battleground states yet. And of course, in the Electoral College, that's what it all comes down to. Now, that battleground state issue takes us to the vice presidential candidate issue, Dan. J.D. Vance, the Ohio senator for Trump, I think has had a bit of a rocky start getting into this campaign. He's, as Kamala Harris has, he's taken fire for past comments he made, past stances he's taken. Harris has taken fire for defund the police comments since she announced her run, and Vance has taken fire for some comments around, abortion or around, children and different things like tax policies for children. And so that makes Harris's vice presidential pick really important. Of course, a lot of people are thinking she might pick Shapiro out of Pennsylvania because she wants those Midwestern states. She wants Pennsylvania, So I think that nationally, this looks like a tie. In the battleground states, it looks like there's too much fog of war and things to be not yet determined. We've seen Vance having a little bit of a tough start here, but I do think he still has a bright future in the Republican Party. He's just getting a level of national attention he's not used to. And the next big news peg here, Dan, is who is Kamala going to pick for her VP?
So we're just a couple weeks away from the Democratic National Convention, which will be in Chicago this month. Casey, we're still waiting, as you mentioned, on Kamala Harris's VP pick. Do you expect to get that in the coming days, by Monday, early next week? Do we have any idea there?
I mean, if I had to put money on it, I would say next week we're going to find that out. I think she wants to have that settled, then have a big, to help build momentum, pick a good candidate, go into this convention with her VP, with her delegates, and spike the football at this convention. She's the presumptive Democratic nominee. There's no question about that, but she does need to cement it to dot the I's and cross the T's at the convention in August. And I think the Harris playbook right now is to not make any big mistakes. She's doing pretty well, doing much better than Biden was doing. The media is kind of covering for her in a way that I've never seen in a long time, maybe since Obama. But Obama was a great candidate, a much stronger candidate than Harris is. And so she has a widespread support from the media. And I think that's because the media feels responsible for taking Biden down, especially the kind of mainstream media and traditionally left-leaning media. They went really hard to remove Biden after the debate. And they were kind of uncharacteristically critical of him. And then when he finally did remove, Harris steps up to replace him. And I think they feel kind of this obligation to, make sure that they're not the reason that Trump gets elected. I know some of these people, this is how they think. And for instance, after 2016, when Trump won, they felt very responsible for getting Trump elected because of how they covered him, how they gave him so much attention. And so we saw in the next election, they ignored Trump much more because they felt that responsibility. So I think we're seeing that with Harris. if she picks a good VP, she does well in this debate. It's going to be a competitive race for her. And I think she has a good chance of winning right now, actually.
Nothing would surprise me the way this entire campaign season has gone on, Casey. If you reference President Biden, who just weeks ago was the presumptive Democratic nominee, he's largely disappeared. We don't hear from him much about anything anymore. There were questions when he initially exited the race a couple of weeks ago via social media, not via announcement, not via public appearance or anything like that. There were questions about his health. Of course, there's been ongoing questions on his health. How much of a factor do you think President Biden will be in this newly constituted race?
Yeah, if Democrats have their way, he'll be no factor at all. I think they're ready to kind of just put him out to the retirement home and let him, and the media, I think, is willing to do that too. They've moved on. They're not criticizing Biden. Even Republicans are largely not talking about Biden or his record anymore. You're not hearing about Hunter Biden's laptop or any of these investigations. Everyone, I think, has moved on and is willing to give Biden a pass. Now, he's sort of reinserted himself into the news cycle by going for the Supreme Court reform. And I think he is trying to save his legacy by doing that. He's trying to appease the liberals who've wanted Supreme Court reform for a few years now. Ever since, there's more conservative justices, they've become very passionate about Supreme Court reform and term limits. But, Biden is doing things like that, which are controversial. I don't think he's going to get, that's not going to happen this term. Congress is going to be focused on recess and campaigning. But he might be laying some policy framework that Harris could pick up and run with if she does win. And I think if, Democrats do get, all three branches, they would, House, Senate, and presidency, I think they'd be very interested in changing the Supreme Court. But right now they don't have that. So it's kind of an irrelevant proposal at the moment. So I think Biden is just riding into the sunset and trying to preserve his legacy. And you saw that even when he gave his White House address, where he nominated Harris informally, but he passed the torch to Harris, as he called it. He spent much of that speech. Yeah, he spent much of that speech talking about his own record and things that he had done well across his entire political career. So it seems that he's very concerned about how he's perceived and his legacy as he leaves the White House, a one-term president.
Well, it is still early August. We have 3 long months of this campaign left to go. With all the twists and turns that we've already seen, who knows where that next twist or turn is going to come from. Thank you for joining us today. Casey, listeners can keep up with all presidential campaign news and more at thecentersquare.com.